Hello, and welcome back to the Form is Temporary podcast. Yes, we are back for a new season of the Form is Temporary podcast. I say we, my trusty co-host from the last two seasons, Chris, couldn't make this one. And we're going to sort of give the debrief of what this season ahead of the Form is Temporary podcast looks like, because it will be a bit different to the last two seasons. Myself and Chris have now finished our time at uni, and we've moved out of Lincoln, so it'll be exciting times. But it means the pod will be a little bit different. It'll be a remote pod from the foreseeable, well, for the whole season, really. And yeah, it's going to be fun. But we're going to sort of update you on how everything's going. Thanks for those that have joined already in the live chat. Really appreciate it. We thought we'd go for a live stream this time. So I can see Emil already in the chat. Thanks for dropping in. So welcome back to the Form is Temporary podcast. This is our third season of the pod. It's been an amazing last sort of 3 years, 2 years really, since 2023, the start of the 23-24 season. We kind of started halfway through not really halfway, but about 6 or 7 game weeks in to that 23-24 season. And now to be on our third season ahead of 25-26. Now the game has not launched yet. Great to see some others in the chat, Thinking Cap and Maggot as well. The game is not launched yet, but we're just going to do a little introductory episode to get the juices flowing before the game launches, probably at some point next month. So without Chris, I've got two brilliant members of the FPL community to chat through the 2025-26 fixtures, as well as we're going to make some little predictions for potential prices ahead of the game launching and the prices being revealed at some point in the next few weeks. So firstly, he is a lovely guy in the FPL community. In fact, this is his third appearance on the podcast and coming all the way from lovely Canada. It is Kanji FPL of the FPL Roundtable YouTube channel. Firstly, Kanji, how are you?
Amazing, bro. You always give the best introductions, Roberto. It's nice to be back on the pod. Can't wait to just break it down. I know we're starting FPL a little bit early. Let's not, jump into like making squads and teams already, but it's just nice to chat FPL in general again.
Exactly, yeah. It's nice. It feels a very short break, because actually our last episode to review 24-25 with Praz, that was sort of around end of May, but it doesn't feel that long since that episode, but it has been about a month, just under. So yeah, it's nice to be back in the swing of things, but we'll be properly back and have our little summer break in the next sort of month or so before the game does launch. But yeah, great to get you on again, Kanji, to help. I know that you've kind of come on, and a lot of the time you've been the stand-in co-host, so you've not just been a great guest, but you've also done great co-hosting duties. I say co-host, but you're really a guest. So no, it's great to get you back on. And our sort of appointed guest of the episode, though, is one of my favorite guys of the community. He does so much great work in terms of his tweets, his X posts on predicted lineups, trends of positional trends. And he even went to the incredible lengths to produce a fantasy game for the recent Ash versus Nick FPL Juice charity match in aid of the amazing cause, street charity. The Street Child United raised a lot of money, over £2,000 for that. So incredible event, which we'll touch on. But really great to get on for a second appearance after a great episode last season. FPL Meerkat Charlie, how are you?
I'm doing great, Roberto. Thank you for having me back on again. Yeah, it's good to be. It feels like quite a short break to get back into the swing of things, but we're going to take it quite easy and talk about the information that we've got at the moment. Not go too headstrong into making drafts or anything like that. Just the initial reaction to get the fires burning.
Exactly.
Before the beginning of the season.
Yeah, very well put, Charlie. And yeah, it's always fun to chat with you, and great to get you on as well. So we're going to start by looking at the fixtures, which of course they were announced on Wednesday, the 18th, which, to be fair, because obviously Watford they haven't been in the Premier League for a good sort of 3 years now, but I always get that buzz when the fixtures do launch, and not just before I started playing FPL in 18-19. I always had that, because it's the Premier League and it's the exciting league, the league we all want to watch. even though in these years that Watford wouldn't be in the Prem, it's still, still just as exciting to get those fixtures. And I have to say, like Ben Crellin, we said it at some of the episodes, the end of last season, with him and Planet FPL James with their predictions of the doubles and blanks being absolutely spot on. But I mean, Ben, what he does for this community is absolutely ridiculous. Like 9:05 when he posted the fixtures in full. I mean, it's 38 game weeks and it's incredible stuff. And then he's even posting, fixture difficulty. It's just incredible. So yeah, what they do is fantastic. And so there's been some great actual posts about the fixtures, because I always like that sort of initial thing, Kanji, when we see the fixtures and it's just me. Maybe it's my OCD creeping in, but I love the color coding and the rankings of the fixture difficulties, because I know, and we'll get onto this when we talk about, because Charlie's done an amazing one. Well, I think is really amazing, because he's not just done one overall fixture ticker, but splitting it into attack versus defense and first five versus longer term. But it's great to see when, we see, people tweeting out, and sometimes you do think like, the game's only just launched, like let's breathe for a second. But some of the tweets I have seen of the fixture tickers, especially I saw a great one from FPL Tips, really sort of well designed and really interesting to look at. So it's great, isn't it, when we do see those, because it's almost like, Kanji, that FPL is well and truly back, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. It's honestly nice to just read through it. I mean, I'm definitely gonna be spending a lot of time looking at the tickers, not trying to memorize it, but if you can sort of just spend a lot of time, you can just be more comfortable with it, and you'll know what fixtures you're attacking, which ones you're missing in general. I've already started building a captaincy matrix. I know that's super early, but that's the first thing that I like to do. And then soon I'll probably be looking at like some 4.5 defender rotations that I like. That's like the best way I like to spend this time. If I go and try to build drafts, it just feels wrong. But the fixtures are really important. That's like half of what's FPL is built on, right? I don't know if you're a fixtures-based manager or like a form-based manager, but I absolutely love basing my just like captaincies and differentials all on fixtures. So this is everything to me.
Yeah, it's a good point. Are you more of a fixtures or a form man yourself, Charlie?
Oh, I think I probably lean more towards form. I think personally, because I like picking the main guys from teams. I like backing the players that are consistent. I will definitely factor in fixtures. Fixtures do play a big part in it, into which I target. But I do think form does play more of a part to me than fixtures do.
That's interesting, because I'll be honest, I think I'm more on Kanji's side when I like fixtures more. Just maybe it's the planner in me, but I mean, last season showed that sometimes planning isn't the most useful, because we get these double game week announcements out of nowhere. But yeah, generally I like fixtures, because for me, like for instance, a lot of the players I wouldn't consider because they don't have the form. You pick them and you're like, well, I like it because the fixtures often do breed form. A great example being someone like Ahmad in that Southampton game, or I remember Kulusevski having Southampton at home game week 1 in 22-23, and he had a good season prior, but not many people were picking him game week 1. But because of the fixture and the sort of down the right hand side, and we said it earlier with Charlie's tweets about positional areas and where teams concede. And I went for Kulusevski, and it was one of the highlights of that season when he got a 13-pointer on the opening day. So it's one of those things. I like fixtures to breed form, but I actually absolutely do agree with you there, Charlie, because sometimes you can be a bit too blinded by the fixtures and see that a team is struggling. I think Man City have been kind of guilty of it in recent sort of seasons where their fixtures are great, the form isn't there, but we just pick them because they're Man City and they're playing Burnley and Sheffield United, but then we see that De Bruyne is out of form, or Aguero is out of form, or whoever it is, and so sometimes it can be a balance of the two. Great to see as well Colm in the chat saying he understands the fixture ticker is done from the opposition they face, but Sunderland with the best start just feels wrong. So we're going to get into the fixtures now. It is interesting, and I get what Colm means, because we don't often see this. Like usually, a lot of the promoted clubs do have tricky starts, and it does still apply to the likes of Burnley, who have got an awful start to start the season. So we'll start off for the purposes of those on audio. We've got FPL Meerkat Charlie's amazing ticker up on the screen. So if you're watching this back on YouTube, you'll be able to see. But basically what it's breaking down is, you didn't just do one fixture ticker, Charlie. You did a few because sometimes it can get a little bit over convoluted and people can sort of miss key points of, oh, this fixture ticker says this, but you kind of don't always want to do that for a lot of, depending on who the FPL asset is, isn't it? Because, you might pick a defender who's got what looks like an okay run of fixtures, but actually for a defense in that team, it's actually not very many clean sheets chances. So maybe doing it for attackers and defenders is quite a good strategy.
Yeah, I like the spot on. Like, I think the biggest example of that, right, is Brentford. If you've got a player, an attacker playing Brentford don't really keep many goals out. So for an attacker, Brentford is a great fixture. For a defender, Brentford wasn't really a very good fixture. Brentford put up some of the highest goals, expected goals, actual goals in the league. Obviously, things might change quite a bit now with huge changes going on there. So, yeah, this early part of the season, there is a ton of variables in terms of what is going to happen with teams. How are they looking? How are new signings going to embed in? Who's leaving the club? I do think Colm's point's very interesting, though, about it's weird seeing some of the teams like Sunderland at the top, because surely their fixtures for Sunderland, it's not great. I guess you could just ignore teams like that. But yeah, and I guess the perfect fixture ticker would be tailored to every single team, how every single team matches up against,
like team strength included. And
Yeah.
that's true. Would you be able to click into the graphic so we could zoom in a little bit?
Yeah. So for those on audio, so the first one we've got here, it's for the first 8 game weeks, and for attackers specifically. So he's sort of highlighted how good of a start it is for Villa, Man City, Spurs. An okay start, pretty good for Chelsea, Arsenal, Brentford, and then not so much for Liverpool, Palace, Newcastle. So yeah, for the purposes of the audio, basically at the top there you've got Aston Villa, Charlie, and Aston Villa are interesting because obviously they missed out on Champions League on the final day of last season, and they've got a lot of exciting players, but players like Morgan Rogers are going to have a massive price increase. And Watkins was underwhelming for a lot of the season, actually, but he ended up in the end sort of ending okay and finishing as the third highest forward in the game. So do you think that someone like a Watkins or someone else around that sort of that Villa attack is going to be a lock for us, even though we've not seen the prices yet? That'll obviously dictate a lot of our thinking.
Yeah, I think it would be a case of looking in pre-season, and obviously I think Rodgers is a huge one. What price he comes in at will be huge. Obviously, he's not going to be 5 million again, but could he be 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5? He could be anywhere in that bracket, I think. But yeah, I think Villa's fixtures, definitely stand out in terms of so I put the score on the side for the audio listeners. I've basically so using the FDR that FPL have, ranking the best fixture possible as a 1 and the toughest fixture possible as a 5. So I've ranked them all at the side in terms of the lower the score, the better. And I will just say, before I talk about the Villa players, the fixtures are way more spread out in terms of difficulty this time around. I did this at the beginning of last season. I can't remember who it was who had the best fixtures, but their score was 18. So they had, I think they had more green fixtures than grey. And then the toughest was Wolves by a mile. They were like 28. Their fixtures were terrible. But as you can see, Villa at the top with only a score of 20, 4 grey fixtures, 4 green. Like, that's the best we've got is that kind of level. So it is actually it's a really, really spread kind of fixtures. But yeah, I think Villa's, I think their toughest game in the first 8 is probably their first one for attackers. This is that game against Newcastle. But after that, Brentford, Palace, Everton, Sunderland, Fulham, Burnley, Spurs, you could back a Rodgers or a Watkins to score in any of those games. So yeah, I'm pretty confident I will be starting with a Villa attacker in my team. I just need to figure out, is it going to be Rodgers or Watkins, basically?
Yeah, it will be really interesting. And I think as well, Kanji, obviously Villa missing out on Champions League, but getting Europa League. They have got Europa League to factor in, obviously. And actually, it's a competition that Unai Emery is so good at winning. But with Villa, it's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of their players, some of their defenders, for instance, did look undesirable a lot of times last season. but then they ended defensively really, really strong. So players like Konza, players like Martinez in goal, who could well leave, it might be very, very tempting to go on them. For sure, as someone who's gone through the pain, do not pick Luca Dean. But Aston Villa defense was ending really strong. Do you think, though, with the amount of games they're going to have to play, a bit like with when they had Champions League at the start of the season, and to be fair, Villa did take a while to get going defensively, do you think you will be kind of going on players like Konza if they come in at another cheap price this season?
I mean, yeah, why not? I mean, for 4.5, there's definitely value there. Like the Aston Villa defenders got a lot of points, but you can't be playing them every single week. Now, you got to keep in mind whenever you look at fixture takers, like what is the window of fixtures you're looking at? Are you looking at a 6-week horizon, 8-week, 10-week, 17-week, preparing for your AFCONs, leaving in game week 18? Like you got to figure out what's the horizon you're looking at, and like adjusting the horizon, you'll see certain teams jumping to the top, other teams moving to the bottom. But Aston Villa is always like a constant. They're just going to be either good or like pretty good in most like tickers. And I think if you're able to rotate somebody like Konza, that'd be fine. But I wouldn't want to go for anybody else because like the X minutes will be questionable as soon as you get to like game week 5 and they start in Europa League. So
yeah, exactly. And yeah, Europa League rotation will come into it, but they also with Champions League had a lot of that, at the end of the Champions League campaign, Charlie. I mean, players like Luca Dean, who, regressively I went with Maatsen. It was so random when Maatsen would play and when he wouldn't. Sometimes it was in the home games, it looked like Maatsen would play and Digne would play the away games, but then for the final day, people thought Digne would play against United and then he didn't. So it's kind of hard to kind of second guess Emery. But do you think someone like a Tielemans, for instance, who obviously is very key from a football perspective for Villa, but not so much an asset we always think about picking in FPL? Do you think some of those players that maybe aren't maybe massive FPL favourites like John McGinn's, if Villa do have another strong season, let's say Rodgers is priced up and Watkins is priced up, do you think those cheaper players might creep into our thinking, or are we just going to be sticking to other teams?
That's a really good point you raised, though. I think as FPL managers, when we look at teams, when we look at attackers, right, when we try to look at forwards and midfielders, we're always looking at the front four, right? We're always looking at the striker, the 2 wingers, and the 10. That's normally what most teams play. Obviously, you've got some different ones that play a 5-back with 2 10s and a 9. So it's those 3 or 4 players in every single team. Tielemans, we assume, plays that role very similar to Enzo. I think Enzo's a player I could compare him to, right? That he plays like on paper further back. But as we saw time and time again, the fact he plays every single minute, Rice was another one who just plays every minute, will occasionally grab a goal every so often. They're often described as casual picks because they aren't as attacking on paper, but they do rack up points over an entire season. And if there's a definitive difference in price between, like Rodgers could be like 1.5 million more than Tielemans, I think there's a very good case to have someone like a Tielemans to kind of have a slice of that Aston Villa attack, maybe not cover, but have have an asset from that team for potentially a bargain price.
Yeah, and I suppose when Villa's fixtures are so good, just having a Rodgers or a Watkins might not be enough. And I guess Tielemans as well, Kanji, he did actually go on penalties for a bit of the season for Villa. So maybe those sort of things we look at.
The Aston Villa like penalty taker was pretty controversial throughout the season. Like Rashford had it at times, Watkins was on it at times.
Yeah,
I don't know. Asensio, I think, missed a few. I think there was a game week where like he missed 2 pens, then João Pedro scored 2 pens. It was crazy. But I think the key thing to mention with Aston Villa is the game week 5 fixture where you'll see Man City play Arsenal. So in terms of like actually building like captaincy matrix, if you don't have Mo Salah and you're not willing to captain him against Everton at home, then you're probably going to look to somebody like Ollie Watkins in game week 5. So that's where they'll be really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, other teams with good fixtures to start the season, one thing we have to get out the way is Sunderland. Cole brought it up. Now, the thing is, right, if it was the 16-17 season, which ironically was the last time Sunderland were in the Premier League, I think we would be all over this as fixture runs because there were so many good premiums back then that we'd shove into our teams like your Eden Hazards and your, Kevin De Bruyne's at his peak. So it meant that we were kind of forced into looking at Sunderland players like Wabi Kazri or Barini, whoever. Nowadays, it feels like, obviously the pricing was really good at the start of 24-25. I felt it did make for some difficult decisions to be made. But Charlie, are you a bit more concerned that because of Sunderland having, not been in the league for 9 years, there is going to be that adjustment period under their, new sort of, well, I say new, but they've got a squad they're used to, but having to adjust to the Premier League, it's changed a lot since they were last in it. Do you think there's any chance you'll start with a Sunderland player?
No, no chance. Unless there's a 4.5 million starter from them.
Or a 4.0 defender,
or 4
maybe?
million starting defender. Which I really hope they do that, by the way. I really hope they put the...
Yeah, I've already heard some whispers about this Hume guy. I think it's Trevor Hume, potentially, but I don't know who.
I can't say I know a lot. I know stuff about Leeds, but not really anything about Sunderland. Yeah, I mean, you can see on the ticker, right? A lot of people's tickers, which, fair enough, they've put all the promoted teams as a 1 in terms of difficulty, because they are newly promoted. We've seen the 3 promoted teams go straight down 2 seasons in a row. Is it probably going to be a 3rd season in a row? I've given Burnley and Leeds the benefit of the doubt, because defensively they have both been pretty excellent in the Championship. Whether that translates across to the Premier League, we'll have to wait and see. But for now, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt and saying that Sunderland as a fixture is going to be better than having Burnley or Leeds. I think for Leeds, I think the general perception is we're still in the Bielsa kind of thought process when it comes to Leeds, that they're just hyper attacking. They'll probably score a goal, but they don't care about how many they concede. That's not really been what Leeds have been like in the Championship. I'm sure you can give a bit more of an insight into that, Roberto, because obviously...
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we had Andy Martin, FPL tactician, on the Game Week 38 preview, and he talked a bit about that. He said that, they do need to change their style a lot from when they were playing under Bielsa. But, trying to play that way and actually succeeding in doing that is 2 different things, isn't it? So, they might try to be a bit more pragmatic at times and not be as gung-ho as they were under Bielsa. But even when they were playing, under Jesse Marsh and, at points, obviously Javi Gracia as well was there, former Watford manager, they just still struggled to kind of keep that defensive solidity. And I think it is hard when they've got such an attacking-minded sort of front three and attack. Players like Jayden Bogle, who, is such an attacking fullback, a bit like when Dallas was there, he's going to go forward and he's going to go, and join the attack. So it does make it hard unless Leeds completely sort of do a Nottingham Forest and buy loads of players and change their system. I don't see it happening. So as I agree with you there, Charlie, that I think Sunderland will be the whipping boys out of the 3, but I don't think we should over sort of accentuate the amount of defensive solidity because, for instance, Leicester had a really good defensive sort of record in the Championship prior to last season, or at least their expected goals against was impressive, and everyone was sort of saying, "Oh, should we think about some cheap Leicester defenders at the start of the season?" And they were absolutely abysmal. So I think sometimes we can get a little bit. I remember Watford doing it actually in 2021. We'd broken the Championship record for the most clean sheets, and everyone was like, watch out, Watford have got a great defense. And that season we were absolutely rubbish in 21-22. So I think sometimes you have to kind of take it with a pinch of salt. But I agree that, certain defenses do adapt well. And maybe in the case of a Burnley, I see what your thoughts on this are, Kanji. But with Scott Parker there now, they are a very different team to the side that, that they had with Company. So they're not probably going to be as free-flowing, you'd hope. But I don't know. We'll see what Burnley do with their signings. But do you think maybe Sunderland could defy the odds, Kanji, and shock us? Or do you think it is just going to be, we're going to be targeting them?
I mean, they don't have a good recipe for success in this position. I mean, they have been in the Premier League before, but they've just lost their best player in Joe Bellingham to, I think, was it Dortmund? Following in his brother's footsteps, which is excellent. So you're losing your best player and you're getting promoted. Yeah, I think this is just a hard avoid. Nothing to really worry about. On to the next. In terms of Burnley, again, I don't want to act like I'm an expert. Like, I'm from Toronto. I don't watch any Championship football at all. Like, I'm going to be looking to target Sunderland, Burnley, and Leeds at all times. Shout out to Andy Martin. I will be rubbing it in your face when I captain against you and get points. But that's just how I'm going to play. I'm a fixtures manager. So that's just how it is.
we have
The
to.
only things that like this is really relevant to me is like who are the Premier League teams that could drop off in quality that could actually be in the relegation battle, right? So I'm thinking the likes of Brentford after losing their manager, that's been getting lots of good value out of one of the lowest wage bills in the league. Potentially using Brian Mbumo, maybe Wissa in the summer. Another team would be Wolves, who lost their best player and Matthias Cunha, as well as their second best player in Ryan Nate-Nouri. Are the new players that they buy, are they going to be at the same level as those two? So those are the two teams that I think could actually genuinely be in a relegation battle. Whereas last season, I really just didn't think that was going to happen. So maybe there's a chance that there's more motivation for these teams that are lower down in the table come the end of the season, unlike this year. But other than that, I'm not looking with any positivity at any of the newly promoted sides myself.
Yeah, that does make sense. I think we have to factor in the transfer window, and obviously, yeah, as you say, teams like Sunderland who have lost Bellingham, which is a big blow, but it was inevitable, really, that he was not gonna stay around, because I think we have to factor in what's happening in the Premier League at the moment. There is this chasm between the Championship and the Premier League, and so rightly or wrongly, Sunderland and Leeds and Burnley will be the favourites again to go down, but it will be interesting because I think someone like an Ipswich, if they had just sort of improved their home form, they had points where they were playing some great football. They beat teams like Tottenham, teams like Bournemouth and Chelsea. So that some of these promoted sides definitely don't go down without a fight. But, the standard of the Premier League is getting better and better. And especially now with teams like Liverpool strengthening, we are going to get onto Liverpool now because they are sort of in the middle of the pack, really, when it comes to the fixtures, and quite an interesting talking point because there is going to be another conversation about, we saw at the start of 24-25, do you go for Haaland, do you go for Salah, or do you go for both? And we've got two Liverpool fans on to chat about this, Charlie and Kanji. So I'll start with you, Charlie. Obviously, Salah getting 344 FPL points is absolutely ridiculous. But the question is, and we'll get onto this a bit later when we talk about price predictions, is that fixture run putting you off Salah, or is it just Salah's just fixture proof?
I'm probably a little more emotional than some FPL managers are. And being a Liverpool fan myself, the fact that Liverpool have got the opening game against Bournemouth at home, and I'm probably going to be going to FPL Fest when that is on, there is no chance I don't have Salah in my team. I do not care what price he is. Price him at 16 mil. I will still have him because there's no way I'm going to that event without Salah and watching him destroy me. Like there's no way. But get onto the fixtures. I do think they are fairly tough. Like those are three fairly solid defenses. Although I've put Bournemouth as a grey fixture, they've sold Kirkez, they've sold Hoyson, and now they've just sold Sabani. They've sold their three like key defenders for them in the previous season. They've like been so defensively rigid. They've sold all three. So surely there's no way they get three signings who are just as good as them for a fraction of the price. And surely they'll be significantly worse at the back. Like I don't see them being the same defensive force they were last season.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, and it's great to see FPL have a beer. Gary in the chat, thanks for dropping in. And this is the thing now, Kanji. We have to be careful because we are going to put so much stock on last season for Liverpool, and I know that you will because of your bias, whether it's intentional or not. But you see Emil in the chat there saying triple Liverpool lock, and I get the temptation because of what Meerkat's just said about Bournemouth and their weakened, and they're starting the season and it's at Anfield as well, under the lights. We know how good, the record is for Mo Salah in Game Week 1 and his record against Bournemouth. But you do have to factor in those fixtures, don't you? When there is going to be a conversation about Man City and Haaland. And as Gary said, I'm going to FPL Fest as well with Gary. So yeah, we'll be excited to see you there, Charlie, and it will be great fun. But we can't just think of Salah as being this perma captain that we always captain or always own, because there were points last season, particularly at the end, where Salah wasn't delivering the price that he was at. So Kanji, do you think players, like maybe Averts, who we don't know how well he'll do in the Premier League, despite him coming in with a lot of hype. Players like Kirkes, now he's joined, and potentially a Diaz or a Szoboszlai will be harder to pick because we know those fixtures. I mean, after the Bournemouth game, it's not an ideal start, is it really?
Wow, that's a really deep question. I think I watched Arne Slot's interview where he was talking about why Liverpool didn't do well in the Champions League, and he actually blames himself. This is a quote. He was saying one of the reasons we didn't do well in the Champions League was because I didn't rotate enough in the Premier League when we played Southampton, and that's one of his regrets looking back on the season. And I think that makes sense, and that is interesting because now what we've done, of course, Frimpong comes in, replaces Trent. Kirkes comes in, basically replaces Robertson's first choice, in my opinion. I think he'll be first choice left back. And you're kind of looking at the options. So there's a lot of depth now because you have Gakpo and Diaz on the left. Salah's probably nailed on the right. Up top is the main question mark. So is Verts going to be playing in the false 9 maybe? Is he going to be taking minutes away from Szoboszlai in the 10? So I genuinely am not sure how to answer that question at the moment. But all of those things will be a wait and see. For now, it's just Salah or don't touch them for now.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, it will be interesting, and we'll get onto this when we get some listener questions, Charlie. But the fixture sort of swings. I remember when the fixtures came out for 24-25, there were a few different points. Game week 12, game week 13, game week 6, where you thought, oh, here's a nice fixture swing. But without giving too much away for when we talk about the listener questions later, it doesn't really, as you said, Charlie. It's a very mixed bag in terms of difficulty for a lot of teams, and there isn't too many weeks of standout fixture turns for a sort of collective number of teams that we'd want to invest in. So it does make it quite interesting when it comes to sort of, potential early wildcard sort of moments to kind of bookmark in your calendar, isn't it?
Yeah, I think especially like looking at the big teams, right? So Liverpool, I've put as significantly with Man City and Liverpool. Obviously, we're expecting once again the most two expensive players to be Salah and Haaland. If I'm so confident about having Salah in my team, I think there's almost no chance I'm going to be able to fit Haaland in, because I think we're going to see, I mean, we'll probably talk about price in a bit. We're going to see significantly more expensive players, far more than we did last season, because we only saw a handful of premiums. We could be seeing a lot of players in that bracket. But yeah, I think Arsenal will be a big tipping point as well. They have they have some pretty tough fixtures, especially for defenders as well. They have some pretty tough defensive fixtures. And I think a lot of people won't start with Arsenal players. I probably will, because those first two are just so good. I know that obviously that Liverpool away fixture is pretty bad. Obviously they play City in game week 5. Forest is, I mean, for defenders, a controversial take, but I think Forest at home for a defender is a good fixture, despite what Chris Wood did last year. But game week 7 is when the fixtures turn, and I think what I've seen discussion already is if people want to use a wild card. I think game week 7, 4 and 7 have been the ones I've seen debated the most. 7 because of potential fixture changes, 4 because it's right after the first international break, I think.
Yeah, no, that does make sense, and it is interesting when we talk about Nottingham Forest. You brought them up there, Charlie, because they, along with Man City, have got a very nice run to start the season. And I know that a lot of people will say that, oh, Chris Wood, when his price goes up, it's going to be harder to justify owning him because the value isn't there so much, and they'll have Conference League football to sort of negotiate as well. But that run of fixtures to start, Kanji, for Chris Wood especially, would be very tempting. And I think when we do talk about these forwards that might get a huge price hike, I mean, someone like an Isak might be sort of in the sort of high 9s, 10s, potentially higher.
Yeah, he should be 10 plus easily.
Yeah. Are we going to have a segment where we just rattle through some players, or do you want to?
Yeah, so I was gonna get to that once. I'm just gonna touch on some of the worst teams, probably the teams we should avoid the most. But like going back to what I was saying, Kanji, there, do you think people will overlook players like Wood, players like Hudson-Odoi or Gibbs White, because they'll think, oh, it is just a sort of one season thing for Forest? Or do you think they can actually have another good season after?
You can include like Nico Williams in there. You can include Milenkovic in that. Cells, they could be very underrated. The problem is that they're going to be playing in 2 competitions now. So even though they were just playing once a week, they're going to need more depth. Are the same players going to be as nailed? Is Nuno going to be as loyal to Chris Wood? Is he going to be getting as many minutes? Will they be able to avoid injuries? Like, all of that is something you have to consider. But I will say their fixtures from 1 to 6 are absolutely gorgeous. And that coincides with what I think will be the first wildcard window in game week 7, because that's going to be where people will be tempted, if they have 0 Arsenal, to just wildcard and put triple Arsenal in and set them in for pretty much the rest of the season. So I think they will be of value to a lot of people. And I think Chris Wood was so goated for so many people last season. I'm sure he'll have some good EO, even if he's like 8.0 million next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Just look at some comments in the chat. So we got one from Midnight Mule saying he'll be at Fest as well. So great to see you there, mate. Also, FPL K-Man, much love to you. Of course, Meerkat and Kanji, big shout out from K-Man. And Gary said, "Where's our boy Chris?" If you rewind to the start, Gary, you'll get an explanation about Chris's availability this season. So yeah, I've got a listener question about fixtures, and then we can go on to some price predictions. So I'll throw this one over to you first, Charlie. From my K-Man fan, he said, "What fixture swings are you seeing so far that you think we should sort of kind of keep in mind before prices come out?"
So I haven't gone massively into detail with like season-long swings. I'm kind of just looking short-term at the moment, because I think, given we're so far away from the season, I don't want to burn myself out looking at the whole scale of it.
Yeah.
So 8, I thought, was quite a nice look. I don't really want to steal Kanji's thunder, because he did mention this, but Wolves have a very nice swing in game week 5. I'll let Kanji talk more about that. But yeah, I think Wolves have a really good swing. I guess Villa's are pretty good from the off, to be honest. Everton have some really good fixtures at the start, but then they get quite tough. I think Chelsea as well. I think a lot of people have looked at Chelsea players. I think attackers wise, it's going to be really interesting to try and pick from them. I've just seen, by the way, that Nicholas Jackson's just been sent off. He's literally just come on the pitch and he's been sent off. Wow. He's
already suspended. He's already suspended for game week 1, and now he's suspended in the Club World Cup.
Yeah, he's stamped someone with studs up. So yeah, gosh. I think Forest is an interesting one as well. Forest is such a mixed bag, because their first 6 is amazing. But then they have that horrible Arsenal fixture thrown in there. So I think there's a very solid case to go for a Forest defender, and then you can rotate them for someone that just has a good game in game week 4. I think Sunderland, not Sunderland, Palace have that Sunderland at home game that week. So that could be a interesting rotation pair. Yeah, that'll be the next step. Like Kanji said, looking for those 4.5 rotation defenders, because I do like to start off with 1 or 2 premium defenders and then 2 4.5s who rotate. But yeah, I'll let Kanji talk about Wolves.
Yeah, like the Wolves.
Yeah, what are you
really
saying?
Interesting. Because like, if you look over the whole season, they have, I don't know if you remember last year, I think they had a really tough patch, then they had an easy patch, and then a tough patch, and then an easy patch. This season, it's a little bit of the opposite, where they have an easy patch, and then in the middle, it's horrendous. Like the full 20 weeks, it's horrendous. But then after that, at the end, it's really good. So that's perfect. That is genuinely perfect from an FPL perspective. And we've already seen a lot of games where Cunha wasn't there and Strand Larson was the 9. So I think going into the season, as long as he's not priced at like 7.5, like as long as he's a reasonable price, I'm pretty sure I'll start the season with Strand Larson in my team. I really like him from an FPL perspective. Should potentially be on the penalties. Not like Wolves will get many. But yeah, that's the number 1 differential that I have on my watch list. I also want to say that I really don't like the Arsenal fixtures to start. Saka is going to be very controversial, because he has this standout fixture in game week 2 for captaincy. But if you take the game week 1 to 6 fixtures as a whole, they're horrendous. Like they have Liverpool, Forest, Man City, and Newcastle in there. That's basically the other worst defenses. So like, you could get the captaincy points from Saka in game week 2, but you're going to be paying the price of likely from 1 to 6. But the counterpoint is that unlike the likes of Palmer and Holland, he will be the most fresh, having a break and being able to rest, not being part of the Club World Cup. So
Yeah,
I mean,
the
Arsenal is
captaincy.
going to
I
be
mean,
very divisive.
it is. The captaincy is an interesting debate when it comes to Newcastle as well, because I think a lot of people will be looking towards Isak for game week 3 against Leeds, but the fixtures around that are absolutely stonking. I mean, there's Wolves in game week 4, but outside of that, it's a really tough start for Newcastle. So, if Isak does come in at a really good price, a really tricky price to sort of squeeze him in, there will be some sort of thoughts about going without him. And, the fixture run for City and Spurs is quite good. So maybe we'll be looking at more Tottenham attackers and maybe a Haaland in there ahead of Salah potentially. But I just think Salah, as we said, is such a good game week 1 record. And I think a lot of people will be ignoring Manchester United and West Ham will be interesting with Bowen. But outside of that opening game, it's not the best run. So we'll see, but certainly interesting. So now we're going to get on to some price predictions. So the way we'll do this, guys, is we'll start off basically with the teams that why don't I say start off? We'll focus on the teams that have got the best fixtures, because I think we can ignore the teams with bad runs. So if we start at Aston Villa, let's say we go with Morgan Rogers, because he's going to be the one that's interesting. Charlie, what's your prediction for Morgan Rogers price-wise?
So let me just have a look. So because he started off at 5, didn't he? Which was
an absolute
before we saw his form at the end of last season. Before the season started, I think plenty of us identified that was a joke. He should have been at least 5.5. Arguably could have been 6. And he had obviously a season that none of us really expected to be that good, quite that good. Not Cole Palmer level, but really, really solid. I think personally, given he plays every single minute, he starts every single game, I think he comes in at 7. I'd say 7 million.
I don't want him to be, but I've got a bad feeling because of the fact he was such a consistent a consistent performer. And even though there were game weeks where he'd get a 1-pointer and he'd get booked and he'd be frustrating, he was so consistent, chipping away with a 5 or a 6. I think he's just been so good for that price. I think it would be remiss of them to not increase it by at least 1.5. So it's between 6.5 and 7.5 for me. And I've got a feeling it will be 7.5. I don't know why, but I just think with how good he was, I think his points per game was so strong as well. I mean, it will be interesting with someone like Jacob Murphy, who was 0.5 more expensive at the start of the season, actually didn't finish that far different from Rodgers come the end of the season. But with Newcastle having Champions League, they might well sign another player in that position. So, yeah, I think it will be more expensive for Rodgers compared to Murphy, for instance. But I think I'm going 7.5 for Morgan. What about you, Kanji?
I would go 6.5. I don't even think he'll be 7. I think 6.5 is honestly a fair price because, when you look at the fact, I'll give you something that's a perfect counterpoint to Rodgers. Antoine Semenyo. Both of them are nailed. Both of them play 90 minutes. You don't have to worry about them as long as they're not in Europe. And if you look at their data from last year, I think points, Semenyo had more points than him, but Semenyo was a troll. He got a lot of those points in more difficult fixtures. Rodgers is more of a darling for the community. When Semenyo returns, it's like, oh, you donkey. And then when Rodgers returns, it's like, oh, we love you, Rodgers. I get it. I get the community has this love for Rodgers, and I get it. That's cool. But if you look at the underlying data in terms of
Rodgers did do that in a lot of tough fixtures as well. Let's not forget.
I was going to say he was synonymous for bench points. I was quite lucky to start him most of the time, but I remember a lot of people complaining about.
I had absolutely no luck. Yeah.
If you look at the XGI on the season, Semenyo is better than him. If you look at it in terms of XG, Semenyo is better than him. So I would pick Semenyo over Rodgers, and he also plays for a stronger attack.
I guess with my logic, I guess I'd have to say Semenyo 7 million as well. Because you're right. I think they are.
And he's not. They're not though. Yeah. That's the thing. I think they're 6.5s.
I think they're priced the same. I think you're bang on that they are very similar players, play a lot of minutes, don't have penalties, consistent. Yeah, that's a good point. I think between 6.5 and 7 is it could go either way. I'd be surprised if they're not priced the same.
Yeah. I will, by the way, I posted a poll on my Twitter. I was like, if both of them are priced at 6.5 between Rodgers and Semenyo, who would you pick? 80% of people picked Rodgers. I was like not surprised at all.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I think people do that, don't they? If they burn you in the past, you don't go back there. And yeah, Semenyo was such a frustrating own for so many managers because he just had so many shots. If points were generated from shots, I mean, I know that sometimes it comes into the bonus points and stuff, but it doesn't give points on its own, right? So if it did, Semenyo would be one of the highest scorers because he just had so many of them, but a lot of off-target shots. But the thing with like Bournemouth is going to be interesting. We said it with Brentford and we said it with Wolves. Bournemouth are losing a lot of their good players and potentially might lose Iraola. We'll see what happens there. So some of these players, if they do kind of come in at a cheaper price, might be kind of made worse by the position of the club and depending on how they go. But yeah, as we've said, Bournemouth fixtures are pretty good outside of the Liverpool game. Brentford is an interesting one because their fixtures are a little bit mixed. So someone like Wissa, Charlie, obviously Mbeumo likely to leave. Wissa could well leave as well. But do you think Wissa, he might be on penalties if Mbeumo does leave? So do you think he's going to have to get a big price, hike?
I think he will because, there's a bit of a trend with Brentford. 2 seasons ago, Tony had an absolutely smashing season. He was the guy. He then left. Mbeumo then became the guy. He scored a bunch of goals. The issue is they've lost Thomas Frank, and that is going to be huge. I just don't know what they're going to be like without him. So I do think Wissa deserves a big price rise, though. What he started off at he was really cutthroat, wasn't he? Was he 6 mil, I think, at the start? 6 mil, and he rose all the way to 6.9. Yeah. So he's going to be at least 7. At least 7. I think I've probably 7.5. I think they tend to price forwards a bit more expensive, which is stupid because midfielders are better. But they tend to price the strikers a bit more than the midfielders. So yeah, I reckon 7.5. And Mbeumo is an interesting one as well.
Mbeumo, do you think he becomes a better asset if he goes to Man United or Newcastle, Kanji, or do you think he becomes a worse asset? Because I would argue he becomes worse because he might not be on penalties. His, sort of minutes might be less than when he was at Brentford. But the problem is, without Thomas Frank, is Mbeumo going to do what Mbeumo's always done under that manager?
Yeah, Mbeumo was one of the biggest overperformers in terms of XG to goals this season. But he's very reliable. When he was at Brentford, he had the corners, he had the free kicks, and he had the pens, and he played 90 minutes. No, bro, Mbeumo was a cheat code last year. So wherever he goes, it's always going to be a step backwards in terms of FPL. And he's definitely going to be getting one of the biggest price hikes. I think he was the second highest scoring player in the game last year. So yeah, he's going to be somebody on the watch list, but not somebody I'll start with for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then finally, in terms of price predictions, we have to get on to Liverpool. Liverpool are really interesting because they do tend to price based on league position. Now, Liverpool, you'd imagine, will go big on a lot of their players. For instance, someone like a Kanate who had a pretty good season. But again, we do tend to pick the fullbacks when it comes to FPL, and we don't know what's going to be the situation with Frimpong. We don't know how well Kirkes is going to do. But someone like Kanate, as a Liverpool fan, Charlie, do you think he will be sort of in that 5 million bracket again, or do you think he might be priced a bit higher?
Oh, Kanate is an interesting one. I think he'll probably get priced at 5.5 because he played a considerable amount of minutes. I think at 5.5 as well. I think that just doesn't make him an option. And also, me and Kanji have spoken a little bit about this, but Liverpool are looking for another centre-back. They're quite hot for another centre-back, and Kanate is not the most reliable for an entire season in terms of his fitness. So I think Mark Gahey's the one that's been rumoured a lot. Looks like we're trying to get a centre-back to sort of partner up with Van Dijk as well. Van Dijk is obviously your player, plays every single game. I think he got rested once in the season, and that's when it was already wrapped up. I think Kanate, it's really difficult because with Frimpong coming in, with Kirkes coming in, We don't know about minutes. I think I agree with Kanji what he said about Kirkes. I think he will just be the starting left back. I think Robertson will probably be out the door. Simicast will be the backup. Kirkes will be that starter. So again, I think it's really up in the air, the prices for all of those defenders. I think Van Dijk will be 6.5. But yeah, Frimpong, Kirkes, Kanate, I think anywhere between 5.5, 5.5, 6. I don't think any of them was 6.5, but yeah, honestly, they're all over the shop in terms
Do you
of
think do you think Frimpong should be priced higher than Van Dijk or no?
I
No,
don't think so.
because I don't think he'll play every game. I think Bradley will take considerable minutes off Frimpong. I don't think he'll play every game. I could be wrong because people will love to spin the whole, well, we've just sold Trent, we've signed Frimpong, who's a right back. He's now he's just our new Trent. But he's not the same kind of player, and Bradley offers something totally different to him. So I think from a tactical standpoint, it doesn't make sense to play Frimpong every game. And I think if they price Frimpong at the same as if they price Frimpong at 6.5, I think very few go there. And I think if you do, you're gonna hate it because you're gonna get a bench premium quite a lot.
Yeah. My next question for you, Kanji, is an interesting one. On Cody Gakpo, do you think there will be a positional change there? Because a lot of the season he did play on the left and Diaz played up front. Do you think he could get moved into midfield?
Yeah, he will be. He's definitely moving to midfield. The key, honestly, for me going into the offseason was about is Diaz leaving? Because right now he's only making like 50,000 a week. Where if he was playing at another club anywhere across Europe, he'd probably be making 150,000 a week. So we've just locked him down at the money because like when he signed his contract, Mane was still there, Firmino was still there, so they were taking the bigger wages. So I think he signed like a 5-year deal a few years ago. So he's really underpaid, and that's why I just think his agent's been trying to get him to move, but I don't think he will because Liverpool don't want to sell. Because I mean, we're going to be losing. We're going to have to replace him with so much money. We're have to spend money to replace him, and then also triple the wage. Like I'm sure we're just going to hold him. This will definitely be either his last season, unless he gets a new contract, or maybe he'll extend after this season. But because Diaz is staying, Gakpo will just be the backup. So it's not going to be that relevant, I think, unless there's going to be an injury. But I think he'll be like a 7.5 mid in FPL.
Would you agree with that, Charlie? Do you think 7.5 is a fair price for Cody?
Spot on. Yeah, he's not nailed at all. I think Diaz, if he stays, is a very similar asset. I think we all thought that at the start of the season. That's kind of what tended to be. It was Diaz and Gakpo on the left. It was Jota and Darwin a lot. They were only ever up top, but obviously when they were injured, we saw all three playing. I think Gakpo will be a really interesting option. I think the fact people didn't go for him at all last season was because he was a forward. Now he's a winger, and I think he's probably first choice. I don't know if that's like true or not, but I think if I'm thinking right now of our starting lineup, our strongest lineup, he's on the left. It could be an interesting one. I mean, I don't think it'll be for me because I do like to just pick my like best player from each team. And I think you'll have like probably an Eze comes in at a similar price. I think I'll just go for him instead. But as a differential, I think it could be interesting. I think you'll get a lot of minutes.
And if there's an injury,
before we get on,
if there's an injury, it opens up the minutes for Gakpo, and I think the whole community will be on him if Diaz is out for a long term. So they have to be careful with the pricing.
Yeah, they do have to be careful. That's a good point. And before we get on to the big debate, Salah versus Haaland, I want to get your views on Wirtz because, you know, for those that haven't watched Bayer Leverkusen or Germany out there, Charlie, do you think Wirtz will come in at a very expensive price to begin with? Because they often do this for big clubs, like, you know, players that move to Man United or Liverpool, they tend to start quite high because I think they think, well, if they become a game breaker, it kind of just ruins the entire game. Like, you know, obviously players like Man United that they've had in the past, I think Lukaku, when he came in, was quite expensive. So do you think Wirtz will come in at an expensive price? And where do you see him fitting in terms of position?
So I think what's likely is Liverpool sign a striker and we see him either in a 10 role or kind of inverting towards the left. We could see a formation change where Gakpo and Salah are a bit more central. I think if Salah didn't exist and Vert signed for Liverpool, I think he's easily 10.5, 11 million. Like coming in for that price, he has to be like insanely expensive. He has to be on that bracket. The fact Salah exists and the fact Salah hogs so much of the chances and the goals and the assists and everything for Liverpool, so much goes through him. I can see his price being a bit lower. I think, like, the thing is, if you put him at 10, do you ever start it? Do you ever pick him over like a Saka or a Palmer? Probably not, because they're the main guys. So I think 9.5 is my prediction for Verts. I think he comes in at 9.5, like just shy of what we consider like the premium bracket.
I've got a feeling he might be priced at 9, just to tempt us to go for him over like you said, a Saka or a Palmer, because the Liverpool fixtures aren't great. So you might look at Palmer and think, oh, let's spend the extra 0.5 or the extra 1.5. I think if they put him at 9, it would make a lot of people tempted. And if, for instance, a lot of people go for Palmer and Haaland, potentially, I mean, I'm not going to ever say you can cover Salah, but people might have the argument that we could get to Salah game week 4 when the fixtures do swing for Liverpool and start with Verts. I mean, the thing is, we did this at the start of last season, Kanji, with Jota, and that didn't turn out too well. So do you think that's a fair price of what's I've suggested and what Charlie suggested?
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to Jota, but he's washed now. So this was just not the right season. If you wanted to cover Mo, I'm going for Jota. Like, even though he had the minutes, he's just not that great.
As a Portuguese, I take offense. I take offense as a Portuguese.
No, he was okay. Listen. Jota was amazing for us, but this was one of his worst seasons. So I just have to be honest.
No, I don't. I don't disagree. I don't disagree.
Yeah, he was shooting the ball. Sometimes it was going to the corner flag, bro. Like it was horrendous.
Game week 1 was good though.
He missed. I'll always remember there was a time where I captained Trent, and Trent puts a ball in to the far post, and Jota just heads it wide. And I'm sitting there like, oh, bro, you used to be so good in the air. What happened? Anyways, going back to Verts, I think Verts is a 10.0 mid. 9.5 is probably the right price. I think that's his fair value, but I think he'll come in at 10 because of how much Liverpool spent on him, as Charlie mentioned. So I think you can't cover Mo, but he'll be somebody to maybe cover him if you're not going to be looking to captain a Liverpool player, but still want a slice of the attack. We're going to have to see how nailed he is in terms of his record in the Bundesliga. In terms of like the top 5 leagues, Salah and Verts are the only 2 players in world football in the top 5 leagues to have double-digit goals and assists. So, I mean, there is good pedigree there. My expectation for him is like 10 goals and 10 assists only in the Premier League, and hopefully he can do that for the next 10 years. But it's going to be a different version of Salah, and maybe we're switching the system a little bit. I'm so used to, Trent playing the ball in behind, Salah running onto it, but now it's going to be a little bit of a different usage of Salah in the system, I think, because Frimpong might be the one that's running in behind. So, and maybe Verts will be used more so in the link-up play. Like there's a lot to learn in preseason, so it's hard to say right now.
Yeah, one more for you before we get to Salah v Haaland. Liam Delap is going to be interesting because the Chelsea fixtures are very strong, and Jackson's suspended for game week 1 for sure. He did get an assist on his debut, but it was in the Club World Cup, so we take it with a pinch of salt. Do you think Delap comes in at a nice price, like a 6 or a 6.5, Charlie? Or do you think it's a bit higher for a Chelsea striker?
He'll be higher, yeah. They can't put him at 6.5, because if he does end up being just the starting number 9, Jackson doesn't take any minutes off him. That's a cheat code. Like, honestly, he could be ridiculous. Yeah. I think he has to come in at least 7.5. I could even see him being at 8. But I think 7.5 sounds about right, because it's difficult because he is coming from Ipswich. But I think we can all agree, looking at Ipswich, I mean, he was good. He was really good for Ipswich. He was really their talisman, scoring so many goals for them. Their real main threat. And I mean, the interesting thing is, I think he has to be priced more than Jackson, right? So I think Kanji said that probably means Jackson's going to be quite cheap because of the presence of Delap. I'd be surprised if they priced Jackson that high, because I think he's definitively going to be second choice.
Yeah, and then when you look at his data from Ipswich, I think Delap had 9 XG and 12 goals. So he's already overperformed his XG. Now, keep in mind, he did have some penalties mixed in there, but He's a good finisher,
True.
and that is what Palmer needs in front of him. Palmer's been creating chances for all these bums in his team, so it'd be nice to see him have like a proper striker that can finish chances.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Palmer had a massive drop off at the second half of the season. I think he had like 4 returns in the last 18 game weeks. It was a really bad drop off. So, as good as Chelsea fixes are, yeah, it will be interesting to see whether or not we get back on the Palmer bandwagon. But you know what they say here at the form is temporary, class is permanent. And as Michael Richards once said, class is temporary, form is permanent. So, yeah, not everyone can get it right. But yeah, those are our price predictions. Before we are going to get into the big debate, which are going to end all debates probably. And we'll start with the City book, man, because we've talked a bit about Liverpool already. Erling Haaland had a very poor season for someone priced 15 million. I don't think there's any two ways about it. And City had a really poor season. Let's not forget Haaland did still score 22 goals, which is a very good season in any normal universe. But when he's priced that much, we expect double digits at least once every 2 game weeks from him. And it was very rare he'd get double digit returns last season. But with someone like Isak at such a good level and so many more points above, even Watkins has now outscored Haaland for 2 seasons running. Do you think Haaland, Kanji, has really got to take a big price drop? But then you could argue with those City fixtures, it kind of is a bit of a game, not a game breaker, so to speak, but it makes it too easy to own Haaland potentially.
He was basically irrelevant apart from the first like 4 or 5 weeks of the season where he scored. I think in the first 5 weeks he had 10 goals. That's where it was Haaland's going to break the goal record. Like, let's not forget who Haaland is and how good of a finisher he is. He's statistically over his career, he's an XG overperformer, playing for one of the best teams in the league. Keep in mind, Rodri was injured for the season. De Bruyne was low-key washed last year. So with Rodri coming back, a Ballon d'Or winner a year ago, I'm expecting a lot more XG created for Haaland. Maybe the likes of Marmoush and Foden will take some of those chances away because we know they're greedy as well. But I think 15.0 is too much for Haaland. I think he'll come down to a nice 13.5. I think that's fair. Anything below that, and it's a joke. I'm definitely going to be starting with him. But it's all relative to what Salah's going to be.
Yeah. So I'll ask you next about Haaland, Charlie. Do you think it would be wrong of FPL, but just because if they price Salah high, to price Haaland high as well, because then they might think, oh, well, that means you choose between one of them rather than picking Haaland because it's a big price difference.
Yeah, so we've got a good comparison, don't we? Because that's what happened this season. I mean, it's mental to think about, but Haaland was 15 million. Salah was 12.5. Yeah. He was so much cheaper. He was 2.5 cheaper. So I think they both have to be high, right? I do think Salah will be higher. But I think Haaland has to come down.
Can't be, he can't be that much higher than, than Salah, for instance, was in the start of this season.
I agree with Kanji. I think 13.5. That's what I've got written down. 13.5, I think.
Oh, really?
sounds right. Higher than what he came in at before, lower than what he was priced at. I think he's such a difficult asset to value at the moment. I think you have to put him high because we know the potential is insane. But I mean, like looking at his goal tally over the season, yes, he scored 22 goals over the entire season, which is crazy high. So many, like over half of them nearly were at that very start of the season. And it's not like he was injured for that long. He played a lot of minutes.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think Salah's season was a joke, right? I mean, I don't think he'll replicate that this season, especially with Wirtz coming in. I think the output won't be like that. So
I mean, as a starting point, right, with Salah, we'll get onto him now. The difference in price for Salah between 14, 15. Now, again, we have to take this a pinch of salt because he was out of the league for a few years. But in 14, 15, Salah came in at a price of 6.5 million. He was then 9 million. He was then 9 million ahead of 17, 18. And after the amazing season he had with Liverpool, a record-breaking season, it was a jump of 4 million to 13. in the 18-19 season, right? So if we're taking that as potentially a good sort of way to measure it, a 4 million jump would put Salah at a ridiculous 16.5 million. Now, he's not going to go as much as that this season, but it does make you think, when a player scores over 300 points, does that factor in? Now, again, this might make it really easy to pick Haaland if there's such a big gap between Salah and Haaland. But even if he comes in beyond 14 million, Kanji, we're still going to pick him, aren't we?
Yeah, of course. I mean, he's broken 300 points twice. He has 8 years with 200 plus. He should be 15 million. If there's any player in the game that deserved a 15 million price tag, it was Mo Salah, like without doubt. And he's a midfielder, and he's on pens, and he's basically a striker. So yeah, I think if there was any player that should have been 15, I think they genuinely got Haaland's pricing wrong last year. I know they changed the bonus points, and maybe they thought that would be favoring the strikers, given that whenever a striker scores, they're usually picking up 2 or 3 BPS. But City have a lot of good players that take the BPS away from the likes of Haaland. You know, you've got like Foden, Marmoush, Vardiol can take the BPS away, but with Salah, it's just him. Genuinely, like there's no one even close, and all the other like attackers are not nailed. They don't really play 90 minutes. So whenever Salah's getting something, he's getting bonus. I think he deserves to be 15.0, and he's the king for a reason.
Exactly. I would echo that. I think if he comes in at lower than 14.5, I think it's an absolute disgrace. I think he has to be at least 14.5, and I would agree with you, Kanji. I'd go 15. Would you agree with that, Charlie?
It's difficult because it's what I think he should be and what I think FPL will do. Because historically, what FPL do, which I think is totally wrong, they price the forwards more expensive than any other position. They typically do that. They've always done that in terms of the most expensive positions. You know, you've got so Henry, Rooney, Van Persie, like all these expensive assets. They shouldn't be. Because, Ronaldo, the game's changed, right? The game's changed. Midfielders are definitively better because of all these little extra things they get. Clean sheet points, extra point for a goal. And if Haaland and Salah are both scoring similar amounts of goal involvements, Salah got even more. But if they are similar, then Salah just blows him out of the water because he's getting 1 point extra for every goal. So in my mind, I agree. Salah should definitely be 15 million. Like, absolutely should be. I don't think he will be because they just don't seem to price midfielders that expensive. It is interesting the point you bring up about his history because he's never actually been above 13 million and he has consistently scored incredibly high. Obviously, this season was way higher than it's ever been before. I've got 14.5, I think, as my prediction that he'll come in. Not quite 15, but so that would put him 1 million higher than Haaland, and I think that given what happened last season, I think that's fair.
The thing that's really confusing for me is with regards to Haaland coming at 15 at the start of last season, because I think it's not done on the previous season with Haaland. In that case, it was done to stop people getting a Haaland. Because I remember game week 1 of 23-24, Haaland's ownership was about 80% game week 1, and so he scored, obviously big points in that first season, 272. So that you're nearly getting to 300 points Salah territory there. And obviously he was massively improved in price by, from 11.5 to 14. But going a million up last season felt wrong because obviously he, in 23-24, he scored about 50 points less than the season prior. So it was a massive underachievement when it came to points. And yet, I know he did score 29 goals, but it was still nowhere near the previous season in which he was, coming in, quite a lot of price at 14 ahead of 23-24. So I just don't see how they can do it again, unless they think with Salah, too many people owned him last season. Again, it might be game week 1. If the fixtures were a bit better, Salah would probably be around 80 again. But I just hope they don't just price Salah, let's say another million more than we think he should be, just because everyone had Salah game week 1. It feels a little bit like they're
they also like priced Haaland out of the game, right? So not only was Salah having like a Ballon d'Or season, like Haaland's price point made him relatively irrelevant. So I think they just had the pricing wrong. I'll give you an example. there are going to be Liverpool fans out there last season in FPL that started with Salah, captained him for most weeks, and you didn't even need to consider Holland once, and you would have been sitting in like the top 5K. That's genuinely
Yeah.
like I'm sure Liverpool fans that are out there probably did that, and I'm sure they're gonna plan to do that again because Salah is just that
Yeah.
consistent. But now he's gonna be priced more expensive, and with the pricing, I think it should be more realistic. Like last year with Holland being so expensive, it didn't make sense. Every time I was on a Twitter space, I was talking to my friends. I encourage people never go to Holland, even in good fixture runs. I remember telling Meerkat when he did it. After he did it, he regretted it. I told
I
my
bet you
boys
were
start
sweating. I bet you were
I
sweating
was,
when he got
of
back to
course,
that hat
bro.
trick.
I sweat. No, I sweat it every week. Listen, I didn't even own him for the where he had 10 goals in 5 games, and people
Yeah.
told me I was the dumbass. But over the season, I mean, avoiding him was the right play. But that's just because
Yeah.
like Salah was too cheap, and it was like this is just obvious. But with Salah going up and Holland potentially coming down, the game is going to be better than it's ever been, and that's what I care about going into next year.
And I think the big thing as well with Salah going up is, like I kind of alluded to earlier, there was a massive difference between Haaland, Salah, and then anyone else. Like you had your Palmer, your Saka, and that was it. Like everyone else was. I think the next highest was 9 million, or I think Son was there, but obviously he fell off massively. So I think there's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of assets in between that like 7 to 9 million bracket. I think there's going to be a lot more next season because I think they've demonstrated that those cheaper ones are like can do the business.
I just think the disrespect to Salah, because in 21-22 he got 265 FPL points. He was priced 12.5 that season. The next season he only goes up by 0.5. Like it's crazy.
I feel like it's relative. It's relative to the game though, because the issue is
true.
Back then we had plenty of expensive assets to choose from. We had Kane in the game. We had Lukaku for a bit. Ronaldo came back for a bit. De Bruyne was expensive. We had loads of expensive players to choose from because it's so obvious that Salah and Haaland are the best two. They have to be definitively more than the rest, because otherwise, if they are priced at that 12 million, 30 million, everyone has them. But back then, not everyone had them because there was so many to pick from.
And that's why they weren't as expensive as they are now, I guess. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's a really interesting chat about pricing for next season. So we'll come back to this at the end of the season with some of our player price predictions and see how far off we were. It could be entertaining. But yeah, that was a really interesting chat. So thank you for that. We'll now quickly just chat about what was an amazing occasion for yourself, Charlie, and for lots of other people that went at Barnet Town Football Club. So a big shout out. I try to give a shout out pretty much weekly, it feels like, for the Juice Boys, because they just keep producing great content. But for those that aren't aware, FPL Juice on YouTube, they produce some really good content for the community every sort of Tuesday, 6:30 live streams. And they've done a lot of great stuff as well with the community. Current champions, of course, Focal Town FC of the Juice five-a-side tournament. We still hold that title, but they did an amazing for the final sort of stretch of the season 24-25, a charity stream with a great cause in mind, for Street Charge United, who the sort of cause that, for those that have heard of Game Week 39 previously, raised money for that. And it was a really nice cause, but also, Juice went big. They often do try their best with these things, and they joke that they're not that great sort of with the technical side of things. But no, they really went big for this one, and there was players with kits, and there was lineups, and the whole thing was streamed on FPL Juice's YouTube. And Charlie, obviously, I was gutted I wasn't able to make it because I would have been there in a heartbeat. But it was actually the day I was moving out all my stuff from my uni house back to home. So you went there, and for those that didn't catch that stream, what was it like?
It was a great day out. And honestly, shout out to the FPL Juice guys. They do an amazing job of putting on these events, all from their off their own back. I think they're criminally underrated in terms of how in terms of their following. They do so much for the community. and they really make everyone feel welcomed, which is great. There was so many new people there as well who played in that game, like not just people I've seen from meets and from other events. It was such a nice time. The game as well was that perfect balance of like people were really into it, getting fired up, competitive, having a go at the ref, stuff like that. But then it was still very, very jokey as well. You still had some people trying some funny things. It was really good fun. I'm not as fit as I used to be, so I didn't play as much of the game as I physically could. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And yeah, I really hope they get the support to do more stuff like that, because honestly, it's like an annual highlight for me now. Is that kind of stuff. It is great fun.
It's so good. I mean, the Juice tournaments were amazing, and that looked incredible. You know, so fit, like commentary as well, and your amazing fancy game. You know, that must have taken ages to do that on a spreadsheet with a Google form. So shout out to you for doing that, because yeah, a lot to calculate. But yeah, it felt very sort of soccer aid for FPL Juice, and it was incredible to see that sort of community pulling together. And you know, people talk about the community, but it just shows how much love there is. And as you said, yeah, people. Not always, you know, that didn't necessarily go to previous ones to see new faces was brilliant. So yeah, make sure to sort of watch out for that next summer, and I'll try and do everything I can to be there next time. But yeah, it was great stuff, and congratulations to Team Nick, Juice Ventus winning in the end. Commiserations to Charlie on bangers and ash. But yeah, it was a 4-2 win in the end, a great game, and some top saves from FPL Panda in goal for Juice Ventus, and Pessimistic Potato. Pessimistic Potato played in the first half, so they did like a bit like with the charity games, like with Soccer Aid, actually, sort of rotating goalkeepers. I mean, I think Sham played in goal for the entire game, but for Juice for Bangers and Ash. But yeah, incredible. I mean, comes on second half, and Panda made some great saves, keeps a clean sheet, and carries Juice Ventus into glory. It was quite the performance, especially, you know, from Plonker as well. You know, some great standout performances that weren't there.
He had me in his pocket. Honestly, he's like someone who just plays football on occasionally at a weekend versus someone who like really knows what they're doing. Yeah, I don't have a chance. If there's one next year, I'll be very happy if I'm on his team and not play against him.
Yeah, exactly. No, and Bruno as well. Got to give a shout out to FPL Bruno, because him alongside FPL Focal and now got really good success rates when it comes to these Juice events. Now, Focal's won back-to-back trophies with Focal Town FC and with Juice Ventus, and yeah, Bruno has made 2 appearances and got 2 trophies, to be fair to him, with Planet FPL the first time out in 2023. So yeah, it's been great to see those events. And FPL Juice brings me on nicely to the Football Content Awards, which are now available to nominate your favorite fantasy football creators. And I have to say, FPL Juice definitely up there. Elite FPL, Stevo as well. FPL Have a Beer. And if you do like the content that myself, Chris, George, and Jack have done the last 2 seasons and going into our 3rd season now, then yeah, I mean, to even be on that list, to be honest, Kanji, there's some amazing names at the FCAs that, you know, Focal deservedly winning last time around, but yeah, to get even a mention is just incredible. So yeah, if you like the stuff we do here at Formers Temporary, we've really enjoyed the journey, but hopefully it should be a nice fun year of content again for 25-26. But we've got to give a shout out to you, Kanji, because, you know, round table as well, FPL gets a lot of love, and rightly so, because I feel like you also should get a lot more sort of kudos in the community.
Thanks, Roberto. I mean, usually like the people that are going to win those awards are going to be like the bigger names. They're probably just going to have like more following, more people voting for them. Like that's normal. But yeah, I appreciate the shout out, man. I love Roundtable, man. Stark and K-Man. It's just such a nice. The thing is like we built a group where like we have complete opposite perspectives. Like I'm fully into the data. K-Man is complete opposite. He's almost 100% eye test, and Stark is like in the middle. So like we work so well together, and all the controversial topics were on opposite sides of it. But that's what makes listening to our podcast so interesting for the viewers, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. No, great stuff. And yeah, as I said, if you do want to vote for the Formers Temporary podcast, for the Football Content Awards, then make sure to head over to the Football Content Awards website or go to our Twitter where we have sort of tweeted. There's a link to go to it, and I think you can go to the Google form via the website and just write a little bit for the former temporary. That would really appreciate any support for that. Moving on, then we're going to end with a couple listener questions and then the quiz. I've assembled a short quiz for tonight because I know that there's a few. Certainly my end, a few sort of slow Wi-Fi details. So I don't want to give you guys too much of a difficulty with buffering and all that. But a couple listener questions to finish off. Firstly, great supporter of the pod, Cookiemon Druv has asked, and we'll throw this one over to you first, Charlie. Interesting. It's very hard with the pricings, but based on sort of initial vibes, what assets do you think will make a big comeback this season after a relatively quiet 24-25?
Oh, that's a good question, because I think my eyes have been on the players who have really performed last season. So, players who haven't really performed. I think Saka's on for a big resurgence. I think he'll be really wanting to prove himself, and obviously he was injured for quite a bit. I think Saka will be looking to perform. I think one to keep your eye on, because I just can't see him having this, like the drop off was the biggest out of anyone, I think, is Foden, because surely with De Bruyne gone, he's going to get a lot more minutes. I think if he gets a sniff at the team and he does well, he'll just continue to play and continue to do well. I think, and Foden as well, I think he'll be priced quite cheap because he didn't have a very good season. He could really be one to look at, and then maybe like a third one. In terms of assets who didn't do too well, I think
Rashford, maybe.
Rashford. Well, I don't even know where he's going to be next season. I don't know. Yeah,
Son,
I don't know where
maybe
he'll be. I don't see it with Son. I think Solanke though. I think Solanke will be an interesting one, because this was mentioned in a group chat about Solanke, and I was like, I'm so far off Solanke. He was a rubbish asset last season. He just wasn't the guy to go for. Like, player wise, brilliant, but like for FPL output, terrible. With Thomas Frank in the team, with managing the team, I think we could see a different Spurs side that I think Frank likes to focus on his strikers, and I think Burnley at home, we could see we could see a brace from Mr. Solanke start of the season. And if you get a good start of the season, you'll have usually a good rest.
Yeah, like you're probably going to get a lot of price rises if he bangs in the first week.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, the thing about Foden for me is, however many players leave Man City, they bring more players in. So, like, I know, you'd hope you get more minutes, but like, Ryan Cherky's now joined, and obviously, they've got defensive options now as well with Ait-Nouri. I worry about where Foden plays always, because as good as he is on his day, we know he's better in the 10. But if players like Cherky have come in to be filling that De Bruyne void, I don't know. It's just hard to know with Foden every season. But yeah, he could be great, as you said, Charlie, if his price is a little bit lower. What about you then, Kanji? Players that you think underwhelmed that might have a better season?
Genuinely, like, the problem with bringing both Charlie and I on a pod together is we think pretty similarly. Like, both Liverpool fans.
You're both Liverpool fans,
talking like all the time.
Intertwined.
Those three are genuinely.
Kanji's really annoyingly good at giving me information, which I agree with and don't want to.
But the Solanke one, just to emphasize that point a little bit more, the striker for Thomas Frank is just guaranteed goals in the Premier League. I mean, when Buma was on pens, he was a killer. Wissa had 19 non-pen goals last year. Tony was ridiculously consistent when he was the striker under Thomas Frank. So Solanke, after having like 19 goals at Bournemouth, moving to Spurs, having a down year where Spurs were prioritizing Europa League, but he might be getting pens. And if he gets pens and he's getting more minutes in the Prem, because I expect them to be knocked out of the Champions League early, and they'll probably just play better football as a team. I just think
Yeah.
Solanke's a really good season-long hold, but his price
There
will
are
be really important.
Yeah, there are three players that you guys haven't mentioned, which I'm quite surprised by. So I'm going to throw them into the ring, into the hat. So see what you think about these. I think they could all have really good seasons, sort of breakout seasons in 25, 26. And the first one is Gerald Kwanzaa, then it's Barco, and then it's Nkunku. I mean, I think they're the next best thing,
Wow.
really. I don't know about you guys.
This is like game week 1 of 365 days ago, bro.
Was about
Yeah,
to say,
yeah,
I was about to be like,
throwback.
Kwanzaa, he's not even going to be in the Prem, but
Yeah, for all those that haven't got that reference, that was a joke. No, the three I genuinely do think Son is going to have a better season. Now, I get what you're saying, Charlie, about Son, that his legs have gone a little bit. He's not quite the player he was, but I think with a new manager, he did really love Ange Son, but I do think at times, because of how sort of expansive Spurs were, they were scoring goals from everywhere. Whereas under Mourinho, under Conte, I felt like Tottenham was more focused to score goals through Son. And I think with how well Mbeumo did under Frank, I think Son might have a similar sort of resurgence in his career under that sort of manager that likes to use his wide players. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a big punt, but maybe Son could be a bit better. I also think some players that we did expect to have better seasons, like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, had a really poor season. But with Everton moving to their new stadium, and Beto had a really good end to last season, so there is that pressure on Calvert-Lewin to deliver. I know what you're going to say, Kanji. He's an absolute troll. I agree with you. But the thing is, let's not forget how good Calvert-Lewin can be if he's just given the right confidence. He's in a rhythm, because when he's in a rhythm, he's one of the best strikers in FPL, I think. Like that season, that peak season of 20 to 21, he was one of the best to own. So, yeah, I know it's a big shout, and this is why it's risky, but sometimes we've got to take a punt. And yeah, maybe him. And the third one, I was really disappointed by. I mean, I feel like it's maybe a bit harsh, but I thought Brighton could have done a lot better than they did. Now, yes, they did well to finish 8th, and yes, they could have got European football, and they just missed out. But for someone like Mitoma, he showed flashes in the season of really good stuff, but I think ultimately I was quite disappointed by him. I think he could have a really big season, because without any European football for Brighton, Fabian Hertzler generally had a really good first season. I think they are going to push on. So I think Mitoma could be back to sort of how well he was a few seasons ago. That mazy run, I always remember that goal against Wolves. So I think those are some three in for some big FPL seasons. But we are going to end off the. What were you going to say, Kanji?
I was just going to jump in with Brighton. I think they're interesting because I think they're going to be much better next season. I think Hertzler will go up another level. The issue I have with them, the glaring issue, is they just a nightmare for rotation. I doubt I'll go for a single Brighton player. João Pedro was the only one you could rely on, and he's out the door. So yeah, I don't think I think he could be an amazingly good asset. I think if he plays, he scores. But you also equally, he could just be benched the following week.
Yeah, and this is coming from someone that does predicted lineups on a weekly basis. So that's
honestly,
mean a lot.
that was the best thing about doing predicted lineups is I got used to which team, like Fulham. I was like, brilliant. Fulham are just easy to try and predict. Maybe Raul and Muniz at the top, but they're easy to predict. Brighton were a nightmare because I could put out a lineup that was an entirely rotated team and could be completely wrong. I could put out their strongest lineup and suddenly Matoma's benched, Minte's benched, Welbeck's benched. I think Ayari.
I'm still not over game week 38 Welbeck. Although I say that, but it did give me the star points, so I won't complain. I won't complain.
You know what? There was one thing I wanted to mention before you ended it off. Because I know I didn't really get to give you a prediction of someone I think that would be underrated. I'm gonna go with Martin Odegaard, and I think he was disrespected by Arsenal fans a lot. Just because
he was poor.
When Saka when Odegaard was injured, Saka stepped up and he became the talisman of the team. He already is. But when Saka was injured, Odegaard couldn't do the same. And what's interesting is that when Ben White came back and Saka came back, Odegaard ended the season very well, picking up like 6 returns in 6. And I was like, wow, everybody that he used to play with, the people he's comfortable with, now he's ticking along with points. Are we surprised? No. So I'll be interested to see how he can do going into next season. He was really disrespected by Arsenal fans in general. They were calling for him to be dropped. He's been horrendous, but I think he went under the radar to end the season. So I'll be interested to see what his price is as a differential whenever Arsenal have good fixtures.
He'll probably be more attacking as
Yeah,
well because they'll be adding Zubamendi, who I imagine plays a bit
true.
deeper. So I think, I think
Yeah.
that's a good shout.
Yeah, definitely. The last few listener questions before we get onto the quiz. Colm, we've already talked about Forest assets for the first few game weeks. They could be really good, worth looking at. But he makes a really good point, Colm, that they have a 2-match playoff in August to qualify for the Europa Conference league phase, and it will be against a weaker opponent. So do you think that might distract them potentially, Charlie? Do you think that, also
Which team
depends
was
what
that,
price
sorry?
they come in? Nottingham Forest.
Forest. I mean, I think
Does
Forest
that
will drop.
distract them?
I think Forest will drop off anyway because they've
Yeah.
got that to worry about. I think they did really massively overperform. I think they won a lot of games 1-0, which just closed off games. I mean, they beat Liverpool 1-0, and I think Forest will not, like, that's my prediction. Is, I mean, I predicted them 17th at the beginning of last season. So
I predicted them to go down. So
to go down. Oh my
Yeah.
god! Yeah, I mean, nobody saw them being quite this good, but
yeah,
I don't think Forest players will be. They'll also be more expensive as well.
Yeah.
Maybe a defender, like one defender, but I don't. I think I'll be steering clear of Forest until they can prove that they're still about it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, let's hope for Palace's sake, Kanji, that their whole situation with their owner, in charge of Lyon and the Europa League sort of thing doesn't mean Palace don't get European football, because that would be a real shame. But they obviously have, Europa League to focus on as well. Some of these teams, Chelsea, Man City, who we've talked about earlier, having some of the best fixtures, with their Club World Cup involvement, they're going to have less of a pre-season. So it could be interesting come game week 1, but there's a long way till we have to work out about, expected minutes. But the next question I've got for you, Kanji, sort of interesting in terms of what players do we think, again, it's very early to say this, but are there any sort of differential? I know you've already picked out Strand Larson as maybe a good differential punt, but are there any other players you think maybe from teams like a Sunderland or a Burnley? I know it's hard to say now, but players that maybe less people will be thinking about.
Okay, I'll give you a perfect one, but I really don't want him to be hyped at all. But it's Justin Kluivert. Now, his minutes were horrendous going into the season. I think the whole season you could be predicting his minutes around 65 to 70 the whole season. But with Semenyo probably leaving, I'm assuming that if the coach stays, that he'll probably give more minutes to the likes of Ivan Nilsson and Kluivert. And I think they'll become like the new teacher's pet, the new player that sort of plays like more minutes. And Bournemouth are the team that has the 4th most XG based on last season's table, which is huge. And I think these assets will be priced at 6.5. So if one of them is nailed, I think they will be one of the best season-long value picks to own, similar to the likes of Semenyo last season.
Yeah, I like that. I do, because I think Bournemouth, they've just been great value. I mean, last season they certainly were, but even going into next season, if Bournemouth do start strong with those fixtures, my sort of under the radar pick potentially for next season, I think, could be Ahmad, especially because of the fact that United's fixtures are so tough. People will probably swerve any United players, which is probably sensible. But the way Ahmad performed last season, he did score a lot of points in the tougher fixtures, scored at Man City, scored at Liverpool. So I don't think we can rule him out getting points. And if he comes in at a nice price ahead of the season, I quite like it. Obviously, he had that injury.
The problem is that like you want an Ahmad in a good fixture run. But the thing is, Man United's fixtures are like the worst in the league, in my opinion, because they have a bad run for like 12 weeks, but they also have their 2 best fixtures in there. So then the rest of it is just mid. Like, it's just like, okay. Like, there's no run where I'm like, I want them for this run.
Yeah. If you've got a stacked midfield and you can rotate Ahmad in for the Burnley game, maybe. But yeah, I agree. It's hard to justify. We got a question from Rahul for you, Charlie. Are there any premium assets? Again, very early to say this, but that you think are essential for game week 1? A price will be so key for this.
The great thing is, I'm going to say no. I don't think anyone strikes me as essential right now because the fixtures are so varied. I think it's all over the place. Like, I'm pretty confident I'll own Liverpool. I made an initial draft, almost kind of like a jokey one, because the game just launched, and I didn't have any other premiums other than Salah. It's difficult because I'd say Isak is almost like one of the most important players to own, but I've got them at the bottom of my ticker in terms of the difficulty of their fixtures for attackers. It's they have a difficult opening set of fixtures. So genuinely, no, I don't think any of them are essential at all. I think you could make an argument to have a Palmer, a Saka, a Salah. I think, by the way, we had 4 premium. Well, you can class Son as a premium, but I think Isak will join that bracket of the premiums. I think those will be the 5: Salah, Haaland, Isak, Palmer, Saka, with Watkins very close below.
Yeah. And as we saw, with Lovro Budison, who won the game for Croatia, he didn't own a Haaland, I don't think, at all, or very few times in the season, and he won the game. And yet, he did score 22 goals in the season. So it just shows.
At the start of the season, you'd have been laughed at because, like, I distinctly remember it. I remember him popping off. I remember selling him on a wild card and going for Salah instead, and then he got a hat trick, and everyone was like, "Well, you've just ruined your season." And then 2 weeks later, Haaland did nothing.
Haaland.
I mean, everyone still owned him because obviously the fixtures were brilliant, but it just goes to show how quickly it changes.
And it just goes to show you don't win the game with the same number of players each season. You know, you can still make up those points elsewhere in your squad allocation through different combinations. You know, it doesn't require one player to win the game. So yeah, absolutely. There's many ways to play this game. Final question then, before we get onto the quiz, is from Ethan, good friend of the pod. First of all, Kanji, which new signing from the Premier League would you most want in your FPL team before we kick off?
Oh, geez. I have a little bit of Liverpool bias, so I'm going to go with Milos Kerkez because I'm looking if Liverpool do buy a defender, right? That means that Konate and let's say Morgehi comes in, they're going to split minutes at center back. Van Dijk will be too expensive at that price. I'd rather have Gabriel on the right. I actually like Bradley. I think he'll take minutes away from Frimpong, so I think Kerkez is the only nailed Liverpool defender. And even in the attack, it's going to be very difficult to predict minutes. So Kerkez is the only one that of the new transfers that have come in that I have my eye on.
Yeah, I like that. My gut feeling is when I looked at some of the sort of, predicted prices, of course, things can change, but, FPL.team and FPL Planner and FPL Plan, they all have great predictions and sort of guesses. But I think if someone like Averts came in at a very tempting price and Salah was just ridiculous price-wise, I think it's between him and Ait-Nouri. Just because City's fixtures are good. I know there is always the Pep problem because he didn't even play in the last Club World Cup game. But yeah, if we think Ait-Nouri is going to play against his old side as well on the opening day, that could be quite nice. Then yeah, I think it probably will be between those two. What about you for new signing, Charlie?
I had 2. One was Kerkez, one was Ait-Nouri. So those 2, yeah. I mean, in terms of like Kerkez, I think he'll play most games. I think he's definitively better than Tsimikas. He might come in at 5.5. I think he'll be extremely good value if he's 5.5. And it'll be interesting to see how good the Liverpool defense is with a different setup with quite a few different defenders, especially if we get Gehi as well. That means 3 of the back 4 would have changed.
The thing with Gvardiol could be a big factor, couldn't it? Because he was obviously scoring so many points and he was scoring a lot of points from left back. So if Gvardiol was moved out to centre back more often, do you think that means the appeal of Ait-Nouri is higher?
Yeah, I think it's a statement signing as well, signing Ait-Nouri, because he's pure, he's pretty good defensively, but he is so attacking. Yeah. He's really good attacking, and I think Pep has seen him and gone, right, Gvardiol is my attacking defender. Aït-Nouri is now going to be the Gvardiol, and put Gvardiol at centre back. There's plenty more options there. I'm definitely going to keep my eye on the likes of O'Reilly and Matthias Nunes, because they'll be reclassified as defenders. And obviously, Gvardiol at the end of the season was so good, because even if he didn't play as a left back, he was playing in a back four with only one other defender. So if they got a clean sheet, then he was the only one.
He was going to get bonus.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think Aït-Nouri, I think his minutes will be good, genuinely, as a left back. I think Gvardiol and Aït-Nouri will play a lot, and I think he's going to be so attacking. Genuinely, I mean, he's going to be really attacking. He could be like he could be Cancelo. You know, I remember Cancelo.
Yeah,
he could be like that.
He could give Cancelo back. If Aït-Nouri comes in at 5.5 or 5, then I could be very tempted. 100%.
You could start with Kirkes, Aït-Nouri, and Munoz. And just like,
I just wish Palace's fixtures were better, because Munoz was so good last season, but the Palace fixtures are a little bit dodgy, so I'm not too sure. But yeah, some great options there and some great discussions about some potential good players ahead of the new season. We're gonna finish on the quiz then. It's a very short one this week because there's only we don't want to keep you waiting too long, but we really enjoyed. It's flown by, this hour and 41, I have to say, so good sign, I guess. So the quiz this week, I've got a couple questions. One is a new feature on the quiz. We usually have our regular hot potato, and we like to do lineup listing, but we're going to throw the cat amongst the pigeons before the season's even started with some of these rounds. So what we've got here is what we like to call, or I've made up the name of hot or cold. Now, it's very hot in England today. I don't know if it's the same for you there in Canada, Kanji, but hot or cold is basically, I will give a list of 6 Premier League / FPL players. For what I want to do, I'm going to have one hot question, one cold question, and what it will be is based on last season. So, for instance, if I said cold, it might be who's got the most own goals out of these players, and if it was hot, who's got the most hat tricks out of these players, as an example.
Like a positive and a negative kind
question.
Of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So, question 1, and this is a cold Palmer question. What is the biggest faller in price from FPL last season? But don't buzz in. Just go for it. And what we'll do is, it's because it's a list of 6 names, you don't need to buzz in. Just sort of give your guesses one by one, and then it's who can get there quicker. Process of elimination.
Wait, can you repeat the question?
Sorry, what was that, Kanji?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So this is biggest faller in price. So from the start of the season to the end of the season, price-wise, the most price, falling. So these are the players. I'm going to name them first, and then you can feel free to start guessing your players in process of elimination. Remember, this is the biggest drop. So first up, Joshua Zirkzee, of course, scored on the opening day. Not a great first season for him at Manchester United. João Felix, of course, scored in game week 2 against Wolves, but then didn't stay at Chelsea. Harvey Barnes. This is for biggest fall in price. Harvey Barnes is in the list. Jarrell Kwanzaa, Christopher Nkunku, and Valentin Barco. So I can repeat them again. Zirkzee,
Oh, has your audio gone, Roberto?
No, don't worry. I think it's Roberto. I think he'll come back naturally over time. But why don't you pick first, Charlie? Who do you think fell the most?
Well, there's some names there that have really surprised me. So I'm thinking, is it them? My mind is immediately gone to Nkunku because he was in everyone's starting team and everyone sold him. So that's immediately what my guess would be.
Yeah, makes sense. If it's not him,
What
then it's
about you?
probably Kwanzaa. Those are probably the two biggest ones, I assume. But let's all right.
What are you saying, Kanji? Is that what you're going for?
I'll go Kwanzaa.
Okay, so Kwanzaa is incorrect. Meerkat, your prediction of Nkunku is correct. So 1-0 to Charlie.
Okay. Kanji, I'll let you answer the next one first.
I knew it was Nkunku, bro. But keep going.
You just got to get in there quick, Kanji. You got to get in there quick. Okay.
All good, all good.
This now is the hot question. Hot. Biggest riser. Biggest riser. Okay.
Ooh.
6 players again. Biggest riser in price from the start to the end of the season. Chris Wood. Mateus Cunha. Alexander Isak. Johan Wissa. Morgan Rogers. Brian Mbeumo. I'll say them again. Chris Wood. Mateus Cunha. Alexander Isak. Johan Wissa. Morgan Rogers. Brian Mbeumo.
Yeah, I think like it's probably going to be like one of Wood, Isak, or Bumo. I'll go first. So I'm going Bumo for sure. He's been him the whole season.
Wow.
What about you, Charlie?
Well, my first thought before you even said the question was not one of the three that Kanji said. My immediate thought was Rogers because he started so cheap. I think it's probably between Wood, Bumo, and Rod. I'm gonna go Rogers. I think it might be Bumo, but I'm gonna go Rogers.
Okay, Charlie's gone with Rogers. He was correct on the last question.
Oh, okay.
Is he correct again? Is he correct again on the next question? That's the question. Has Charlie done it 2 times running to give himself a 2-0 lead? I can tell you, it's an equalizer for Kanji. Rogers is incorrect. The answer is Mbeumo. Most
makes sense.
high rise. Okay. Final question then. The decider. It's 1-1. And the decider is about the Premier League fixtures. So I really do hope that you were paying attention on Wednesday when those fixtures dropped, because I'm going to give a specific date, and I want you to be the first ones to get a correct fixture on that date. Okay?
Wow. Okay, hang on. I've got a graphic up. I'll close it. I'll close
No graphics. No graphics.
Yeah,
no
I've
cheating. Come on.
It because I had it for this video.
Right. So this you might think this is really hard, but I think you'll be better at this than you think, because we all study the fixtures. Now this season,
no way.
Okay.
As things stand, there isn't due to be Boxing Day fixtures. Instead, Boxing Day's on a Saturday this year, on a Friday this year, and the Saturday games on the 27th. So, what I want to know is, can you, by any chance, name one of the fixtures to be played on that weekend of the 27th of December? Now, I'll give you a clue for this to narrow things down. Why would you need to know that, Kanji?
Because I don't know the dates.
Okay, you're all good. Game week 18 is
all right. Cool.
27th of December. So, to give you a clue, one of the fixtures is a London derby. A second fixture here is a London derby. And the team who finished top of the league, whoever that is, I think you know, are hosting the team that sacked their manager quite early into the season.
Yeah,
that
that's
could
the easy
be
one.
a potential clue for you if you call yourself fans of that club. Do you know that fixture?
Bro, that's easy. Meerkat, you should know this one.
A team that sacked their
Okay.
manager pretty early on. I see. The thing is, I didn't
Oh,
look.
thinking-
I only looked for the
thinking
first 8
cap.
weeks. I didn't look further than the
Yeah.
first 8
Thinking
weeks.
Cap FPL in the chat. Thinking Cap FPL in the chat has just said, I sent you the dates this morning, bro.
Yeah, you did. I didn't look at that breakdown
Oh,
yet, but I
Kanji. You could have had a leg up, mate. You could have had a
no,
leg
no,
up there.
bro, don't worry. I know this is easy. This is the Liverpool versus
Oh,
Wolves in game week 18. That's easy.
Oh, sugar.
He's got it. He's only gone and got it. Yeah. Well
Yeah,
done.
it's too
Well,
easy, bro.
you know
I
what?
was going to have a stab at the London derby.
What would you have
Guess.
said, Charlie?
I'll guess too. Don't tell us yet, but
I'm
you
going
guess.
to
I'll guess.
go. Oh my god. I'm going to go Arsenal Palace.
No, don't. I don't think
It
so.
was involving. It was involving Crystal Palace.
It was
Who is
Palace.
it?
It was involving Crystal Palace. But think of another London
Oh
team.
goodness.
Brentford?
No, think of the team
I have no
close
idea,
to
bro.
Arsenal.
Spurs.
Yep.
Spurs
Damn,
Palace.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Ah.
Spurs
I thought
Palace.
it
did
was.
think
I thought
it's
it was
Spurs,
gonna
yeah.
be. I thought it was gonna be Arsenal Chelsea. But maybe I'm just so wrong. Oh, God. Anyways.
Yeah. As K-Man has said, this is a real test. We don't put you, through. We put you through your paces here on the Form is Temporary. We like to really grind the elite levels of quizzing out of our guests. So no, well done.
Nah,
Congratulations, Kanji.
Yeah, the only reason I won this is because I built my captaincy matrix yesterday. Meerkat was too busy building his FDRs for the first 8 weeks.
Yeah,
8
If
weeks.
you told me about game week 8, I could have got it.
Yeah, 100%. He would have beat me for sure.
Great stuff. No, that's a great way to end. Thanks again. Really appreciate Kanji you coming on to help co-host. And of course, Charlie. Great to have you on for a second appearance. Hope you've enjoyed, Kanji.
Yeah, I loved it. It's always nice to chat with you too.
Oh, absolutely. Pleasure. And Charlie, thanks again for those fixture tickers. They've been really helpful, before the season's even started to get that little, way into the FPL season. So yeah, thanks again for coming on.
No, yeah, always great to come onto these. Yeah, really look forward to start of the season. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully that's whetted all of your appetites watching or listening on YouTube and Spotify. The Spotify upload will be going up at some point soon, so check that out Saturday morning probably. But yeah, thanks for those that have watched this evening on the stream on YouTube. It's been good to get. I'm sorry, there's been a few technical things my side. That's my bad. But generally, it's been pretty good. So thanks again for watching and commenting and getting involved in the stream. But yeah, that's where we're going to end off. That is where we're going to have a little break now before the game launches, and I'll be back with some great guests. We've got some big plans for this season. No, thank you, Midnight Mule, for coming along and for tuning in. Really appreciate it. But we got some big plans this season. The Form is Temporary, 3rd season. We had some great members and guests on, the likes of Planet FPL James, Holly Shand, Jan Batra. The list goes on, really. We've been very blessed to have some great people on. But we're going to go up another level. We're going to try and get some more great members of the FPL community, from the big accounts to the smaller ones. It's great to get everyone on. We always love to give a big voice to everyone that makes the community what it is. So yeah, watch out for that and stay tuned for their first when the game launches. But until then, make sure to remember, stay subscribed on Spotify and turn that notification bell on so you don't miss an episode. And also on FPL Yellow Army's YouTube, as you're watching here, feel free to hit that subscribe and stay notified. But thanks again for coming on, Charlie and Kanji, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Peace out.